Welcome back to STON Talk. Today it's just me and Wale, and honestly, I wasn't planning to get philosophical today, but then STON.fi dropped this cross-chain update, and now here we are. Because the more I looked at it, the less I felt like this was just another feature launch.
See, that's exactly where my head went to. Most people saw the announcement and thought, cool, new feature. But I think there's a bigger conversation hiding underneath it.
Exactly. For anyone who missed it, STON.fi has launched TON to EVM swaps. So users can swap between TON and chains like Ethereum, Base, BNB Chain, and Polygon directly inside the app. And when I first saw it, my brain immediately went, wait a minute, are we slowly reaching a point where chains stop mattering?
That's a dangerous question to start a podcast with.
Laughing, I know. But seriously, think about it. A few years ago, people were practically picking sides. Ethereum people were Ethereum people. BNB Chain people were BNB Chain people. Everybody was arguing about who was going to win.
And now everybody seems to be building ways to connect to each other.
Exactly. It's almost like the conversation changed. It used to be competition, now it feels more like connectivity.
I think that's because reality kicked in. People realize that users don't live on one chain anymore. A user might hold assets on TON, trade something on Base, explore something on Ethereum, then go somewhere else next week. That's just how crypto works now.
You know what's funny? Crypto people love talking about chains. Normal people don't.
Facts. Normal people just want to do what they came to do.
Exactly. Nobody walks into a restaurant and asks what database they're using. Nobody opens a streaming app and asks what server architecture is running behind it. They just use the product.
And that's probably where crypto eventually ends up. The average user doesn't want to become a blockchain expert. They just want things to work.
Which makes me wonder, have we accidentally made chains too important?
That's actually a really good question. Because if you think about it, crypto users spend a ridiculous amount of time thinking about things most users shouldn't have to think about. Networks, gas fees, bridges, compatibility, wallet connections. Half the vocabulary in crypto would scare away a normal person.
Not half, all of it. Imagine explaining to your grandmother that she needs to bridge assets before interacting with a protocol.
She'd tell you to leave her house.
Exactly. And honestly, she'd probably be right.
That's why I think this update is interesting. Not because it's cross-chain, but because it removes one more reason for users to think about all that complexity.
Now, let's talk about TON specifically. Because one thing I've noticed is that people sometimes treat ecosystems like separate countries.
That's actually true.
You hear people say things like, I'm a TON user, I'm an Ethereum user, I'm a Base user. And it's almost like they're carrying a passport.
Crypto tribalism is real.
Very real. But do you think updates like this slowly break down those walls?
I do. Because when moving between ecosystems becomes easier, people become more willing to explore. And exploration is good. Builders get more visibility. Users get more opportunities. Everybody benefits.
That's actually interesting, because one thing TON has always been trying to do is attract more users. And if users from other ecosystems can interact more easily, that sounds like a positive thing.
Absolutely. Think about somebody who's never used TON before. The easier it becomes for them to interact with assets connected to TON, the lower the barrier becomes.
You know what else caught my attention? The fact that this is happening inside STON.fi. Because a lot of times when people hear cross-chain, they immediately assume they're about to enter a maze.
A maze is the perfect description.
No, seriously. One wrong click, and suddenly you're reading a tutorial written by somebody named Crypto Wizard 247 from 2 years ago.
And somehow the tutorial always starts halfway through the process.
Exactly. You're already lost before the video begins.
That's painfully accurate.
But that's why this launch feels different. It's not just about connecting chains. It's about making that connection feel normal.
And that's the part people might underestimate. Sometimes the biggest innovations don't look dramatic. Sometimes they're simply making something difficult feel easy.
Let's talk about Omniston for a second. Because every time STON.fi launches something major, Omniston somehow ends up in the conversation.
Well, that's because it's becoming a bigger part of the story.
What stood out to me was this line saying users either get the exact amount shown in the interface or the swap doesn't execute and funds return. That's actually a pretty bold promise.
It is. Because uncertainty has always been one of the biggest frustrations in crypto. Nobody likes surprises when they're moving money.
Especially when you're moving money between ecosystems.
Exactly. The more predictable the experience becomes, the more confidence users have.
Now, I want to throw a bigger question at you. 5 years from now, do you think people will still introduce themselves as TON users, Ethereum users, Base users, or do you think they'll just be crypto users?
Honestly, I think we'll move closer to the second one. Not completely. Communities will always exist, but I think users will care less about where something is and more about what it allows them to do.
That's interesting, because if you're right, then maybe this update isn't really about TON and EVM swaps. Maybe it's about something much bigger.
Which is?
Maybe it's about making crypto feel like one ecosystem instead of 10 different ecosystems fighting for attention.
I think that's a fair way to look at it. And honestly, if that's where we're heading, I think users win.
I agree, because at the end of the day, nobody gets into crypto because they love switching networks. Nobody gets into crypto because they enjoy complexity. People come for opportunities. They come for innovation. They come for new experiences.
And the easier those experiences become, the bigger the industry can grow.
Well said. And honestly, I think that's the perfect place to wrap things up. Because maybe the most interesting part of this announcement isn't the chains being connected. Maybe it's what that connection says about where crypto is heading next. Wale, thanks for joining me.
Always a pleasure.
And thank you all for listening. We'll catch you in the next episode of STON Talk.